It's a tube. It's a tape. It's a tube. Today we are talking about Tupe from Goodhertz. And to do that, I brought along my good friend, John Paterno. John, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Mark. Good to see you as always.
You too. Yeah. This is going to be really cool. I've been kind of eager to check this plugin out, but I haven't gotten to load it up yet. So I'm really happy that you're the one to kind of demo it and show
Thank
us
you.
what it does. Yeah.
I was excited when it came out. It came out as a beta, and then and now the full release came out, I guess, a few months ago. But I really like their stuff because it really does things quickly when you grab. I'll show you in a second. A couple of things I've discovered with it, but yeah, I really like what this company does and what they go for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's dive right into it. I'm going to pull your screen up here. So what are we listening to today?
Okay, this is a little track I recorded a couple of years back. It's kind of simple, bass, some drum, percussion stuff, and 4 guitar parts. And I thought it would have a couple of good spots that I could show some of the things that Tupe can do.
Awesome.
So let me start with something kind of simple. I've got this guitar part on here. Let me play a little bit of the arrangement where it is at the moment. Let me just play from the top into a little bit. Okay, so here's an example right off the bat of something that I think Tupe could be really useful for. We have this single note guitar right here, and it's just a DI guitar part. So let me play a little bit of it. Okay. And let me now put on Tupe. Where is it? There we go. Let's just talk about how it's set up for a second, because it is really intuitive to use. Let me leave it soloed. So we got an input drive. We have the tube intensity section, basically. They call it a mount, which is pretty straight ahead. 100 in the middle is kind of where, like, real world application. If we go to the left, it lessens the intensity, and then as we go to the right, it gives us an even more intense process. And so what's cool is right off the bat, there's 2 ways to add this intensity. You can add drive right off the top, and then you can also add more tube or more tape. There's a few different tube models in here, and low, medium, high. I don't remember if that's a gain thing, or while they did their modeling, or a bias. It might be one of the 2, although there is a separate bias control for it right here. Bias is here on the left, and for the tape it's on the right. And then the tape here, there's 4 different choices as well. And between the 2 of them, there's a lot of tonal variations, which is another thing I love about this thing. Instead of just reaching for an EQ, it's kind of nice to just kind of grab something that's a tone shaper. And once you get your head around what it does, it really does a lot. You can turn each module on and off. There's also an opto compressor in it, which sounds, it almost sounds like a tube version of an LA3A. It's faster than what you would think a regular opto is. And then it's got a comp mode and a limit mode, and the limit mode's even faster. And so all of those things combined make it really, really cool and useful. And then at the back end, and we'll get to more music in a second, is you have this kind of 2-band EQ kind of filter section that does a ton of stuff just on its own. So let me just zoom in and let me loop a little of this. and turn some knobs, and you can kind of hear. I'll start with the tube and the tape. So let's loop 8 bars of this. So I'm gonna go through a few things. I'm gonna add some drive, I'm gonna add some tube, I'm gonna add some tape, and we'll kind of see what some of these things are doing to the process here. Here's a little bit of it in the track just at this point. So we've added a little more size, we've added a little more grit to it, and we've changed the mid-range focus quite a bit, just by going to that C90 mode. So it's a kiss, right?
That tube thing, the tube emulation sounds amazing. The air, like the top end glassiness of that feels great.
It's really kind of natural and smooth, but yet you really hear it do its thing. Yeah. Man, they did an amazing job on this. And we're not even diving into, like the bias and some of the other details with the tape or the tube. And once we get a little farther here, I'll go through some of the different tube modes, because I have it set pretty extreme. We should be able to really hear the differences.
Awesome.
So here it is in the track, and I will bypass it, and I'll bypass it first, and then I'll kick it in. So there is a slight level difference, but remember, we're also getting such a different mid-range boost now in the sound because of what's going on. It's just changing the whole perspective.
I love how quickly you were able to pull something up with it, though. Like, that was, for what it appears to be a simple plugin on the surface, until you start realizing all the different ways that you can kind of calibrate these things. But with relatively low effort, you were able to get something really cool right away. That was neat.
And we haven't even gotten to the next section. And I'm going to kick this in right now, which is the filter section. So that is engaged right now. So we've got a 2-band. It's basically a 2-band EQ with slope on either side. So I'm going to solo it up again so we can really hear what's going on. And I'm just going to make a couple of small moves and check out what I can do. Now, check this out in the track. It's pretty damn cool.
Yeah, that's great. I I love the sound is what's important here, but the light show that's happening on the right is definitely fun.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, it's like a spectrograph almost kind of thing, right? And
Yeah.
then there's a few other interesting little bits right off the bat. You have a tilt function, so you can actually take the whole thing that you've done, and then you can tilt it with a treble slant or a bass slant. So this is what I mean.
Oh, that's super cool. It's preserving the shape.
Exactly.
Yeah, giving you a tilt.
Yep.
That's super handy.
Yeah. Really, really cool.
Do you have the compressor in right now with it?
I do. The opto is in. So I'll run that a little bit and I'll take it in and out, and you can kind of hear what's going on there. So yeah, it's definitely doing something. It adds some nice tone to it.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel. It's funny. It feels like a stronger version of tube and tape combined to me, more so than an actual compressor. I don't know if that makes any sense at all. But Goodhertz also has a limiter in their high-low filter set. And this reminds me very much of that limiter. And again, it's super useful. You start blending it in and it does some really cool things. And this is comp mode. Let's see what happens when I switch it to limit. Adds a little kind of more hair to it and just makes it sound like an old record in
Right.
a really cool way.
Oh, this is really cool. Have you gone through all the different tape or tube emulations?
I've gone through them and I haven't. So normally with me, I start to make kind of mental notes as to what does what. So let me just go through at least the main ones right here. And I'm going to leave it on the C90 for the moment because I just like what it's doing. So let's see if we just vary the tube type. Let's see what this does for us. So that's only 4 out of the possibilities, and you've got 4 very different tones.
Right.
It would be fun to
Yeah.
do a whole mix with just this plugin.
Right. Well, you've got there's so many options in there.
It would be a really fun challenge for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It might be, yeah, you could do it.
Yep.
It's interesting on the on the 6L6, like how much snap there is on it, and the attacks are completely popping out, and it's doing the grit. Yeah.
Well, since you pointed out the 6L6, let's go back to that for a second, and then let's hear the variations because there's 3 choices just with the 6L6.
Right.
So let's go there, and I'll do the same. Every couple, I'll switch. So it's cool. I mean, context is everything, right? So some
Yeah.
things are going to sound a little better than others in different contexts. Now, just for the heck of it, so let's just look at these two parameters real quick. We've got noise, which is literally adding noise to our signal, which you
Soothing,
may or may not
like the
want,
ocean.
but it's there. And then now what happens if we change the bias in this 6L6 setting? Okay, so as you can hear, more tonal shaping, more mid-range focus, and a few other little details like that. It starts to sound a little bit more like that mid, but not quite the same.
Yeah, it's interesting how much it changes the tone of it, as well as the distortion characteristic and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do we have for options on the tape side again?
So the tape, we have 4 different modes. We've got 2-track high and low, and I think the speeds are 15 and 7.5.
Okay.
And then C90 high and low, which are the tape speeds for cassette, which I think I wrote down here. Yeah, I wrote down 1530, but I'm pretty sure it's 15 7.5 for high and low. And then tape speeds are 3 3/4 and 1.875.
Nice.
For the cassettes.
Yeah.
So let me start on C90 again, because that's where we've been sitting, and then let me switch through all 4 of them.
Cool.
So to make it more dramatic, let me increase the tape amount here as well, just so that we can really hear what it's doing. Also going to get a little more distortion, obviously. So let me do this. Let me just come back a little bit more with it. And this is probably going to be a little more source dependent too, because we've got a guitar that's pretty narrowly focused. But I'm hearing a difference in the top end in particular as we go through all 4 of those.
Yeah. It's also cool that you can use each one of those modules by themselves. You know, if you didn't want to drive a tube or whatever, you could just use tape and vice versa. And yeah,
exactly.
I mean, versatile.
Yeah. If you go back to kind of the base setting, actually, maybe let's go to a different sound. And now let's check it out on this percussion loop I have here. Here it is on its own. It's a little distorted to begin with.
I love that.
So once we put Tupe on it, let's see what kind of things we can get into with it. All right, I'm going to go a slightly different route. I'm going to start with the compression and kind of work backwards and see where that gets us. I mean, it's already compressed and distorted, but now what happens if we really amp it up a little bit? Let's get a sound going on this. And then let's start with just the limiter first and see what that gets us. Okay, and now let's add in some of the tube. I love what it's doing on that last snare shot of the pattern, because you get this really cool delay thing that's going on. I have a delay right in front of it by another company that makes cool stuff called Unfiltered Audio. And
Yeah.
so that's part of the sound that's going on already. But with the way it's hitting this limiter, it's really bringing it out. So let's hear it in the track real quick and see what it does.
That's
Pretty
really
cool.
cool. Yeah.
And then,
yeah, it's really emphasizing that offbeat thing at the end
yeah,
that I don't think I picked up on before. That's really cool.
It definitely has a tone, in, you know, it definitely enhances things in a super cool way. Now, one other thing I discovered while working with this is these filters are so steep and there's so much gain available that they actually ring. So I thought, as a really creative enterprise at one point, if for some reason you needed to change the tonality or add a tonality, like if you needed something brighter or more percussive in a track, you could literally take this thing and create like a cowbell or something. Here, check this out. Okay, maybe not a cowbell, but you can actually turn it into some whole other percussive instrument.
Yeah. Be interesting to automate that too, and get motion going on like in steps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was actually fooling with it earlier, and I think I was able to get it to sound more like a percussion instrument on bass, actually. So maybe we'll look at that in a second.
Nice.
But
That's
even
crazy that it feeds back on itself.
Yeah, I mean, I love when you can push things to where they sound broken. I mean, that's really one of the more fun things. So just for the heck of it, what does this sound like against the track? So that sound into reverb might be super cool, right?
Right.
It's almost like somebody, it would almost sound like somebody doing some whispery kind of thing in there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
When you were going through it before, like experimenting with having it ring back on itself, I was starting to have flashbacks to doing the Mishby video a little bit. It's like waiting for the unicorn to pop out.
all right, so this is kind of, I'm going to pop this filter out and kind of keep what we had going on. In the meantime, let me try it on the kick drum first.
There's a texture to the tube that I'm trying to think of another plugin where I've heard that before, but I haven't been able to achieve it that clean. You know, it feels almost, I don't know. There's artifacts that come with some of the other popular distortion plugins that kind of have tube modes that this one doesn't have some of the things that kind of tweak my ear with the other ones.
It feels like it filters and rounds off properly on the top end with the tape and the tube, which some of these things don't seem to do
Right.
nearly as well. That was the other thing that really impressed me with this from the very first iteration of it. I mean, it got better as they went through the beta versions too. And even though it was a public beta, I jumped on it right away because yeah, I really like what these guys do.
Yeah.
All right, so here's the kick drum, and it's a pretty plain Jane kick drum. I mean, even right there, the basic presets, and then just going back and forth between those two. I mean, it's really pretty incredible how much it does something cool to the sound. So
Right.
let me just do a few little variations on here. Like it sounds like if I decrease the tape and bring up the tube or go to a different tube, we might get a pretty pleasing tone out of this. Hear how even at this setting, you get this whole nice lower octave that comes in?
Yeah, definitely. That was the first thing that I noticed when you brought it in. Even with just the tube thing going on, it was like there was an extension underneath it.
But now it's not folding anymore because we've decreased the amount of kind of saturation going into the plugin. So, you know, and it's kind of counterintuitive. Sometimes you don't think about turning stuff down to get it to sound bigger or more clear. And in this case, it really does that. And
Yeah.
again, like this, we haven't touched the EQ. All we did was put this on.
Yeah.
And let's try a different tube. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Very cool. I'm curious, have you tried this on an entire mix yet?
On the bus?
Yeah.
I have not. Let's see what happens. Let me
The
just
reason I ask, there's one of the Puremix videos, Fab put it or he had a It was a spring reverb unit that they took the tubes out of and built on an insert so you could run stuff through. And the tubes sound like that. At least in my memory, they sound, that's the exact sensation that I had when he kind of used that thing.
Well, let's do this. Let's save settings as MA. And then let's open this same exact setting on the stereo bus.
For anybody who wants to know, it was the Fab DuPont mixing 1, 2, 3, 4 video on Puremix where he did that.
Let's try this on the stereo bus. Let's just put it right in the front and see what this gets us. And we're going to go right to Mark's preset. We'll bypass it first so we get a little bit of what's going on. It's pretty cool.
It's intense.
Yep.
Yeah.
So as a parallel drum compressor, as a parallel anything, I'm sure it's got a ton of uses for that. And there are some things. The manual is really well written, so I would suggest anybody that's really checking this out, go through the manual because there are a lot of cool tricks. It has this emphasis mode, which only affects the tape and the tube, but it's almost like a sidechain filter for both of them. So it changes the frequency response of both of them. And yeah, so it's really cool. There's another mode. The emphasis only affects the tube and the tape saturation signals. It's almost like a bias slash sidechain kind of at the same time.
So whereas filter plus calibration is like kind of doing a post EQ kind of thing?
Yeah, so that's post EQ or wherever it allows you to put it, which I think is post only. It allows you to put this filter between post and BTW is between. So
okay, so between is new to me. I don't think I've ever seen a between switch for things. It's going between tube and tape.
Between tube and tape. It goes between the two processes, and it's in two different places, I believe, on the compressor. And the sat mode on the compressor compresses pre-saturation signal only, leaving the final signal uncompressed. So it sidechains. Again, it's a different way to sidechain the tube and the tape.
That's really cool. It's really, really good UI design too. There's the traditional thing would be to have a glowing tube on there, and they've kind of jammed a lot into a very easy to navigate interface,
100%.
Yeah. It's not a typical looking plugin, but it's very quick to kind of navigate around and move things around in the signal path. That's cool.
And it doesn't say stupid stuff like warm and toast and burn, or like everything makes sense. Everything I really think they're a great company in that sense. They really everything does what you expect.
Yeah, I noticed that as you go up and down, like with Tube, if you bring it all the way down, it's it's skinny font, and then when you go all the way up, it's like kind of fried looking. It's a little reminiscent of a sausage fattener. Just needs an angry face on it.
Oh man. No, it's super smart. So there are kind of three plugins in the world for me. There's the Fix It, there's the Enhance, and then there's the Manipulate. And what I love about this plugin is I can find applications for all three of those uses. If I have a really kind of bad sound with with funny low end, or if I just need to filter something, even these filters are really powerful to use just on their own. The Enhance, we can just, we can just throw a few things on, and suddenly we've nicely tone shaped our sound, almost like a vintage emulated plugin would do. And then if we really want to manipulate, the sky's the limit. And I'm sure
Right.
I've just really scratched the surface to what this can do. And it's very rare to have a plugin that fills all three of those categories for me in such a strong way. And this thing has really, really done it for me.
All right, so that is Tupe from Goodhertz. John, thanks so much for coming on the show. This has been really fun. Where can people find out some more about you?
I've got my website, johnpaternomusic.com. And then I also have my mix therapy one-on-one teaching, mixing instruction, and that's mix-therapy.com.
Awesome. Cool. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.